Hey there, I thought I would change things up a little bit. I'm heading out to a client's horse area and wanted to bring up the concept, perspective, thoughts of what is the difference between when we see horses when they're young and they're curious and they're interested in exploring and trying new things, and then what happens as the training progresses and the horse seems to become more fearful, more reactive, less interested in the human experience, less interested in the world around them. In fact, maybe even hyper reactive to the world around them. And what has happened and how does this influence their physical behavior? As you can hear probably in the background, it's quite a windy day. But I just thought this was a good opportunity as I'm out here working with some horses. I find many people don't really understand and actually have been taught not to break things down. And so we often get distracted by all of the unwanted behaviors, such as things like, how do I get my horse not to spook? How do I get my horse not to bolt? How do I change things up to where, my horse isn't so fearful all the time, or I'm not really sure about like what my horse is going to do next. And I find that, these are, of course, the symptoms of a horse who is probably starting off a bit defensive, who probably is starting off not acknowledging the human, and probably a reflection of some holes in the communication between human and horse, as far as addressing the initial subtle ways that a horse is showing that he's insecure. And so when we think about young horses and starting off their education, so much of the time there's these preset training programs, these preset training schedules. The horse at this age must know how to do X, Y, and Z. And often it's unfair, inappropriate, and the quality of the training is pretty inconsistent. And then, especially for horses that are sent out to the trainer, when the horse comes home, and the owner has no idea how things have been done or why they've been done or what has been done, and the trainer has no idea the clarity and the understanding from the owner in their horsemanship skills, it just sort of leaves everything up to become a really big potential train wreck. So one of the things that I wanted to mention in here is starting to stop and put value to the moments that our horse is still curious. And for a lot of my job, when I have these horses where I'm kind of the last stop because all the mainstream training approaches didn't quite work out, it's really about reawakening that horse's curiosity, because when he is curious and interested, the fear diminishes. So it's not about practicing helping a horse become less fearful of the world around him. Instead, it is reawakening what he was originally born with, that curious and that interest. Now, there are going to be things that might surprise him. There are going to be things that maybe he's unsure of, but there is a difference when the horse is interacting with the human and in what we'll say unnatural scenarios and all the things we ask of the horse. When there is a curious and an interest and a availability from the human to allow that horse time to search and explore and try things out, still within boundaries. We still want to keep things safe. But I find because there is a preset agenda often that we have and a self-imposed urgency. This was a horse that was born in the wild, that was sent immediately from the wild to me up at my northern facility that I'm at in the summertime. And I had given her time, a long time actually for our society standard, before I ever asked to touch her, and allowed her to be curious about me and did things in a way and presented things in a way to where she could be interested in the human experience, so that by the time we did things like haltering and leading and so on, it wasn't a big deal. So anyway, so my point is, when we take away this unnecessary self-imposed urgency, hi Chloe, of the moment, we start to get horses who, she's now 3, can maintain what they were born with, as far as an interest and a curiosity about the human experience versus a tolerance and a containment, and offering these, we'll call, trained obedient behaviors. And what happens is, so much of the time that the horse, or the human, has been taught to practice with the horse a scenario. Oh, he doesn't like water, let's make him go through the water 50 million times so that now it seems like he's okay with water. Well, when you then present water in a new spot, often the horse feels like he's balking, or he's concerned, or he's fearful, or he's avoidant, because we never actually changed how the horse felt about the water. We just conditioned the horse to be tolerant of the water in one location, but when the location changes, feels like we're starting all over again. So many of these responses that become overwhelming for the human, that become frustrating, that maybe feel exhausting, or create stress and fear in the human from wondering what their horse might do as they present new and different scenarios, comes from a place of these ideas that we want an obedient response from the horse. And for me, I don't ever want an obedient response from the horse. I want the horse able to think through scenarios. I want the horse mentally available and curious about what it is that I'm presenting. I want the horse available to hear my input without it feeling like I have to make them stay right now in this area. There's actually 3 other horses back there that this mare could be with, and instead she chose to give me horse ears and be with me. But I find that many times we don't realize that in the journey of training and doing what we think we're supposed to do, or what the professional is telling us to do, how shut down we create our horses from trying to replicate scenarios over and over and over again until it seems like our horse is now safe. And unfortunately, what I find is the more repetition that we try to create, the more defensive the horse becomes in the scenario, and it just winds up that we're actually building a fear and an anticipation, even though it seems like the horse may physically be complying in the moment. The reality is they're not really soft and adaptable. So I just thought I would bring this up because this has been, coming up frequently, especially in talking about when other people are trying to give us input as we're learning and as we're on our journey. And maybe take some time the next time you head out with your horse and start to notice, how many things is your horse interested in? Or does it seem like your horse, stands in the same place or does the same 3 patterns when you head out to that pasture, and that they stay pretty stuck on what it is that they expect? Or if there is a certain pattern and you change that pattern, does your horse have a problem? Or is your horse more than willing to just hang out and be part of a conversation, whether or not you are asking anything of them? And if the horse is starting in a place of willingness, you have a increased chance of maintaining the curiosity. The more you introduce, the bigger you expand their world experiences and create these unnatural scenarios that we put them in, versus the more education they have, the more mentally shut down, defensive, fearful, and then reactive in all these unwanted physical behaviors. So just a few things to think about. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for joining me.